Think of the person who irritates you the most, not someone who genuinely harmed you, just someone whose very presence puts your teeth on edge. The way they talk, the way they need attention, the way they seem to get away with something. Hold that person in your mind. Because Carl Jung had an idea about them that is genuinely uncomfortable. He believed that the traits we cannot stand in other people are very often our own, the parts of ourselves we have refused to see, looking back at us from someone else's face. He called this projection, and it is one of the most important and least flattering discoveries in all of psychology. Once you understand it, you cannot unsee it. You start to notice it everywhere, in your arguments, your judgments, your politics, your own racing heart. In the next few minutes, I want to show you what projection actually is, how to catch yourself doing it, why it quietly poisons your relationships, and what becomes possible the day you take back what was yours all along. This one stings a little. That sting is the point. Let's begin with the mechanism, because once you see how it works, the rest follows. In the last videos, we said the shadow is everything about yourself you have pushed out of sight, the traits that didn't fit the image you wanted to keep. But here is the problem the mind runs into. That material does not simply evaporate because you refused it. The energy is still there, still alive, still inside you, looking for somewhere to go. And the mind has an elegant, dishonest solution. If a feeling is too painful to own as mine, it relocates. It gets cast outward, onto someone else. This is projection. The disowned trait leaves your inner world and reappears with astonishing vividness in the person across from you. Your own buried envy becomes their greed. Your own denied anger becomes their hostility. Your own hidden hunger for attention becomes their insufferable showing off. And crucially, it does not feel like projection from the inside. It feels like simple, obvious perception. You are not aware of casting anything. You are just certain, completely certain, that they are the problem. Now, projection usually needs a small hook to hang on. The other person often does have a trace of the trait, just enough for your mind to fasten the whole disowned weight of it onto them. A grain of truth, carrying a mountain of your own material. Think of the person who cannot stand someone they call fake, who is irritated beyond all reason by a little social performance that everyone else barely notices. Very often it is the one who polices their own image most tightly, who has never let themselves be openly seen wanting something, who feels that heat the hottest. The fakeness out there is the rule they enforce painfully on themselves. Why this matters for you right now. If you do not know this mechanism exists, you will spend your life completely convinced that your strongest dislikes are pure observation, when some of them are autobiography. So if projection disguises itself as plain perception, how could you ever catch it? Jung pointed to one reliable tell: disproportion. When your reaction to someone is far bigger than the situation actually warrants, that is the signature of the shadow. A coworker mentions their achievement, and instead of mild interest, you feel a hot flush of contempt. A stranger online does something faintly annoying, and you think about it for hours. Someone is a little needy, and it fills you with a disgust that seems to come from nowhere. The ordinary response would be a shrug. The size of your reaction is the clue. That heat, that obsession, that surge of moral superiority, that is not coming from them. It is coming from a pressurized place inside you that has just been touched. Ask yourself the diagnostic question: is my reaction proportional to what actually happened? If a small thing produces a large storm, the storm was already there, waiting, and this person simply walked into it. There is a second clue too, and it is almost funny once you notice it. We are often experts at spotting the exact flaw we carry. The chronically late person who rages at lateness, the interrupter who cannot bear to be interrupted, the one who is hardest on a weakness in others is very often fighting that same weakness, quietly, in themselves. Jung put it in one unforgettable sentence: everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Read it as an instruction, not a poem. The irritation is not noise to be silenced. It is a signpost pointing directly back at something you have refused to look at. Why this matters now: the next time someone makes your blood boil out of all proportion, you have a choice. Treat it as proof that they are terrible, or treat it as the most honest information you will get about yourself all week. Here's the seductive thing about projection. It feels wonderful. To project your own darkness onto someone else is to become, instantly, the innocent one. They are the arrogant one, so you are humble. They are the selfish one, so you are generous. They are the problem, so you get to be clean. Projection hands you a free, gleaming sense of righteousness, and that is exactly why it is so hard to give up. But the bill comes quietly, somewhere else. The first cost is blindness. Every trait you successfully pin on someone else is a trait you never have to face in yourself, so you don't. You stay exactly as unconscious as you were, while feeling more enlightened than ever. The second cost is your relationships. You cannot actually see a person you are busy using as a screen. Your partner, your family, your colleagues slowly stop being real people to you and become characters in a story about your own goodness. Picture a couple where one person is privately certain the other is cold and withholding, and who, year after year, gathers evidence for it, narrates it to friends, builds an entire case. And all the while their own fear of being vulnerable, their own quiet withholding, stays completely invisible to them because it is so much easier to see it living in the person across the table. Consider, too, the person who cannot keep a friendship or a relationship alive for long, and who has, always, a completely reasonable explanation. This one was too controlling. That one was too cold. The next was too much. The common thread, the one person present in every failed connection, is never examined because every flaw has been safely deposited in someone else. Jung described where this ends with chilling precision. Projections change the world into the replica of one's own unknown face. Sit with that. If you project enough, you no longer live among real people at all. You live in a hall of mirrors, surrounded on every side by reflections of the very thing in yourself you most refuse to see. Why this matters now: the more you blame, the smaller and lonelier your actual world becomes. Everything so far has been personal, you and one other person, but projection does not stay small. It scales, and this is where Jung, who lived through the rise of fascism and 2 world wars, became most urgent. When a whole group shares the same disowned shadow, they can project it together onto another group. The collective darkness a society refuses to see in itself gets poured onto an outsider, a minority, an enemy, a scapegoat. And the relief this provides is enormous. Suddenly, all the cruelty, all the corruption, all the rot is over there, in them, and we are pure. We are the good ones, threatened by the bad ones. This is the quiet psychology underneath prejudice, underneath mob outrage, underneath the dehumanization that lets ordinary people do monstrous things and feel righteous while doing them. The enemy becomes the convenient container for everything a people cannot bear to admit about itself, and you do not need a war to see it. Watch how a crowd online turns on a single target, the speed of it, the glee, the certainty, the way the outrage so wildly exceeds the offense. That excess, that disproportion, is the same tell as before, only multiplied by thousands. A collective shadow has found a place to land, and notice how good it feels to join, how clean, how unified, how righteous the crowd becomes precisely as it forgets its own capacity for the very thing it is punishing. Jung's warning was simple and grim. The shadow you will not face in yourself does not disappear. It comes back as fate, as the enemy at the gate, as the scapegoat in the square, as the conflict you swear was forced upon you. Why this matters now, in an age engineered to inflame us against each other, the ability to pause and ask, what of this is mine, is not just self-knowledge. It is a small act of resistance. So what do you actually do? You learn slowly to withdraw your projections, to call home the parts of yourself you have scattered onto other people. It begins the moment you feel that disproportionate heat. Instead of immediately acting on it, you pause, and you ask the single most powerful question in this entire series. What is this in me? Not to excuse the other person. They may genuinely be difficult, but to ask honestly whether the size of your reaction belongs to them or to you. Then comes the hard part, the part almost no one is willing to do. You look for the very trait you are condemning inside yourself. The arrogance you hate. Where do you quietly crave to be admired? The neediness that disgusts you. Where do you secretly ache to be held? It will be uncomfortable. It is supposed to be. Jung was clear that this cannot be done through self-attack, which only drives the shadow deeper. He wrote, "Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. You are not trying to beat the trait out of yourself. You are trying to acknowledge it, to let it back in, to say, yes, that is in me too." And something strange happens when you do. The other person shrinks back to their actual size. The villain becomes just a person again, flawed, like you. The charge drains out of the relationship. Consider someone who spent years despising a sibling for being selfish, only to realize painfully that they had spent their own life performing a selflessness that was quietly exhausting them, and resenting everyone who dared to simply take what they wanted. The day they owned their own buried selfishness was the day they could finally be in the same room without a war. Why this matters now? Every projection you withdraw is a piece of your own energy and your own freedom returned to you. So imagine living more and more without that constant outward casting. What actually changes? First, you begin to see people as they truly are, not as screens for your disowned material, but as separate, real, complicated human beings, which is the foundation of every genuine relationship you will ever have. You start to notice when your first hot impression of someone says more about your day than about them. Second, your inner world grows quieter. So much of our daily agitation is the friction of unacknowledged projections rubbing against reality. Take them back, and a strange calm settles in. The world stops feeling quite so full of enemies because you are no longer manufacturing them. Third, and most surprising, you reclaim power. Every trait you projected was a piece of your own vitality you handed away. The disowned anger you saw only in others, once owned, becomes healthy assertiveness, the ability to say no and mean it. The hunger for recognition you despised, once admitted, becomes honest, unashamed ambition. You stop being secretly run by the people you cannot stand, because they no longer hold a hidden piece of you hostage. This is what Jung meant by becoming whole, not becoming pure, but becoming complete. Gathering back every exiled part of yourself until there is nothing left to project. And from that wholeness, you can finally meet another person without needing them to carry your darkness for you. You can let them be flawed, and let yourself be flawed, in the same room at the same time. Why this matters now? The clearer and kinder you learn to be with yourself, the more clearly and the more kindly you can see everyone else. So here's your question for tonight. Bring back that person from the very beginning, the one who irritates you most. And instead of asking what is wrong with them, ask the braver question. What are they showing me about myself? What disowned trait did I hang on their face? You may not like the answer. That discomfort you feel right now is the shadow, recognized. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this met you where you actually live, subscribe and stay close. In the next video, we turn to the strangest part of the shadow of all, not the dark traits, but the good, gifted, powerful parts of yourself that you also buried. Jung called it the golden shadow. Until then, when someone makes you furious, remember to ask whose face you are really looking at.